There's this strange thing that happens inside the human mind, and honestly, most people walk through their entire existence without ever catching a glimpse of it. It's so basic, so deeply woven into the fabric of who we think we are, that it becomes completely invisible, like trying to see the air you're breathing, or asking a fish to describe the water it's swimming through. And this thing, this phenomenon I'm talking about, is absolutely wild when you finally spot it. Here it is. Almost everything you do, almost every single choice you make, almost every word that comes out of your mouth is being run through a filter. And that filter is one simple question playing on repeat in the background of your consciousness like a song you can't get out of your head. That question is, what will they think of me? Now here's the crazy part. You probably don't even hear yourself asking this question. You might be sitting there right now thinking, no way, not me. I make my own decisions. I live my own life. I'm independent. I do what I want. But I'm telling you, if you actually stop and watch yourself closely, really observe what's happening in your mind, you'll start to see it everywhere. Watch yourself the next time you're talking to someone. Notice how carefully you pick your words. Notice how you adjust the tone of your voice. Notice how you present your thoughts, how you angle them just right. Notice the incredible amount of energy you're burning trying to create a specific impression, trying to control and manage how the other person sees you. This whole approval-seeking thing starts incredibly early. When you're a baby, you figure out fast that your survival is tied to making the big people around you happy. You cry, and mom shows up. That's your first major lesson in how the world works. You learn that getting someone's attention and approval equals survival. It's cause and effect at its most basic level. Then as you grow up, the whole system gets way more complicated. You learn to smile at just the right moment. You learn to say the things that make adults light up and praise you. You learn to hide the parts of yourself that get you in trouble or make people frown. And slowly, so slowly you don't even notice it happening, you build this fake version of yourself, a performing version. A version that exists mainly in how other people see you. The really heartbreaking part is that somewhere along the way, you forget you're doing this. You start to completely identify with this performing version of yourself. You actually believe that's who you are. You get so incredibly good at the performance that you lose track of where the act ends and the real you begins. If there even is a real you left underneath all those layers of pretending. So here's what I really want to dig into today. What actually happens when you stop this exhausting show you've been putting on? What changes when you finally quit seeking approval from other people? And I need to be super clear about what I mean here because people get this twisted all the time. I'm not saying you should turn into a jerk. I'm not suggesting you should go out of your way to offend people or completely ignore how they feel. I'm not telling you to become selfish or mean. What I'm talking about is way more subtle than that and way more powerful. I'm talking about that moment when you stop building your entire life around whether other people approve of you or not. This is a total game changer. A complete revolution in how you experience being alive. Because when you're constantly chasing approval, you're not actually living your life. You're living some kind of weird reflection of what you imagine other people want you to be. And here's the truly exhausting part. Those other people are doing the exact same thing. They're seeking approval too. So you're trying to please people who are trying to please people who are trying to please other people. And it's this endless nightmare of mirrors, reflecting mirrors where nobody is actually home. Nobody is actually real. Let me paint you a picture of what this approval-seeking actually looks like when it's happening. Imagine you're at a party or a gathering, and someone asks what you think about something. Maybe it's politics, maybe religion, maybe just some random topic. Now, if you're brutally honest with yourself, you'll notice something happens before you answer. There's this tiny fraction of a second where you're running a calculation in your head. You're scanning the room, reading the energy, trying to figure out what opinion is going to make you look good, what answer is going to earn you respect or agreement or make people think you're smart. You're not asking yourself what you genuinely think. You're asking yourself what you should say to create the right impression. Or think about your job, your career path. How much of what you're doing actually lights you up inside? How much of it genuinely excites you? And how much of it is just performance for your boss, your coworkers, society in general? How many people do you know who are stuck in careers that drain their soul, living lives that feel like wearing shoes 3 sizes too small, all because they're desperately trying to meet expectations that don't even belong to them? Maybe it's their parents' expectations, or maybe it's just some vague idea of success they absorbed from movies and TV and growing up in whatever culture they grew up in. Or look at the relationships in your life. How many people stay in friendships that feel hollow or romantic relationships that feel dead? Not because those connections actually feed their soul, but because leaving would mean facing judgment. Think about how much pain people endure, how much of their true self they bury and suffocate, all just to avoid the harsh eyes of other people's opinions. The need for approval is like living in a prison. And like most prisons, you can't even see the bars because you've been staring through them since you were born. They're just part of the scenery, part of what you think reality is supposed to look like. But here's where it gets really interesting. The second you actually recognize this prison, the moment you truly see it for what it is, something starts to crack open. And when you stop seeking approval, not because you're rebelling or trying to prove something, but simply because you finally see how pointless and draining it is, everything transforms. When I say everything transforms, I mean it. First off, you discover who you actually are, not who you think you're supposed to be, not who your parents wanted you to be or who your friends expect you to be, but who you genuinely are underneath all the masks and the acting. And this discovery is often shocking because the real you is usually pretty different from the performing you. The authentic you has different interests, different values, different desires than the version you've been showing the world. The real you might love things you've been pretending to hate. It might be pulled toward paths you've been avoiding because they didn't seem impressive enough or respectable enough. It might have opinions and thoughts that don't fit into nice, neat boxes that win applause. When you stop seeking approval, you finally give yourself permission to explore these things. You can finally ask yourself the real questions. What do I actually love? What genuinely fascinates me? What do I really think about this? Not what should I love, or what would make me seem intelligent, B-U-T. What's actually real for me right now? This is incredibly freeing because you've been hauling around all these shoulds and supposed tos your whole life, all these heavy ideas about who you need to be. And suddenly you can drop them. You can stop performing. You can stop trying to manage what people think. You can just exist as you are. Now, when this shift happens, something absolutely fascinating occurs in your relationships. The people who were attracted to your performing self, the people who gave you approval as long as you played the role they wanted, these people start to disappear from your life. And this part can hurt. You might lose friendships you thought were solid. You might even lose family connections. People will tell you they're disappointed. They'll seem confused or even angry. You've changed, they'll say, and it sounds like an accusation. And yeah, they're right, you have changed. Or more accurately, you've stopped pretending. You've stopped twisting yourself into knots to fit their picture of who you should be. And they feel betrayed because you've basically broken an invisible contract. The deal was, I'll approve of you as long as you keep being the person I want you to be. But here's the beautiful part. At the same time that some relationships crumble and fall away, others get deeper and more real. Because when you stop performing, when you drop the act, you become authentic. And authenticity is like a magnet. People who are also tired of fake relationships and social games. People who are hungry for something real. They're drawn to it like moths to a flame. You start attracting people who actually appreciate the real you, not the mask. And these relationships are completely different from approval-based ones. They're built on genuine seeing and being seen. They feed you instead of draining you because you're not constantly working overtime to maintain some image. You can relax into yourself. You can breathe. Also, when you stop seeking approval, you become basically impossible to manipulate. Think about how much of advertising, how much of politics, how much of social pressure works by dangling approval in front of you like a carrot. Buy this car, and people will admire you. Adopt this political view, and you'll be one of the good people. Dress this way, and you'll fit in with the cool crowd. The entire machine of social control runs on people desperately wanting approval. When you're not hungry for approval anymore, that machine loses all its power over you. You can't be controlled through shame. You can't be bribed with the promise of status. You're free to make choices based on what's actually true and real for you, what actually helps you and helps others, rather than what's going to earn you gold stars from some authority figure or peer group. This doesn't mean you stop caring about people. Actually, it's the opposite. Paradoxically, when you quit seeking approval, you often become more genuinely kind and considerate. Because kindness that comes from wanting approval is really just manipulation wearing a friendly mask. You're being nice because you want something back, even if it's just a good opinion. But kindness that comes from simply recognizing other humans as conscious beings like yourself, that's real compassion. That's authentic care. Now I want to talk about the fear. Because there is serious fear that shows up when you even think about stopping this approval-seeking behavior. Your mind goes into panic mode. It starts throwing catastrophic scenarios at you. If I stop trying to please everyone, I'll end up alone. I'll be rejected. I'll be thrown out. I'll lose my job, my friends, everything. And there's actually a good reason for this terror. It goes way back to our evolutionary history, to a time when being kicked out of your tribe literally meant you would die. Being alone meant you were prey for wild animals, meant you'd starve, meant you wouldn't survive the elements. So the fear of disapproval is ancient and primal. It genuinely feels like life or death. But here's what you need to understand. That ancient fear doesn't apply to your life now. You're not going to die if some people don't like you. You're not going to be thrown into the wilderness to be eaten by wolves. The worst thing that happens is some people won't like you. And when you really sit with that, when you really look at the idea of some people not liking you, you realize it's not the end of the world. Actually, it's unavoidable. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you perform and pretend, some people aren't going to like you anyway. There's this incredible freedom in accepting that simple fact. Some people won't like you, and that's completely okay. You don't need everyone on earth to approve of you. You don't need universal praise. You just need to live as your authentic self and connect with the people who resonate with that truth. Let me share something from my own journey. For a long time, especially when I was younger, I was obsessed with what people thought of me. As someone who was into philosophy and spirituality, as someone who eventually became a teacher, I was constantly monitoring my reputation. I wanted respect. I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted people to admire my knowledge and insights. And this concern shaped absolutely everything. It shaped what I wrote, what I said in my talks, even how I dressed and carried myself. I was performing this role of the wise teacher, the knowledgeable guide, and it was draining, though I didn't fully realize how much until things shifted. The shift happened gradually, through studying Zen, through meditation practice, through just getting older and more tired of the act. I started caring less about approval. I started saying what I actually thought instead of what sounded impressive. I started admitting when I had no clue about something, instead of pretending I knew everything. I started laughing at myself, showing my flaws and doubts and confusion. And you know what happened? Some people were definitely disappointed. Some decided I wasn't as wise as they thought, that I wasn't worth respecting after all. But others, and these were the people who actually mattered, they loved the authenticity. They found it refreshing like cold water on a hot day. They felt like they could finally relate to me as an actual human being, instead of some image or authority figure on a pedestal. More importantly, I felt this incredible sense of freedom. I could breathe deeply for the first time in years. I could explore ideas without worrying if they made me look smart. I could admit confusion and doubt and not knowing. I could simply be myself with all my contradictions and imperfections and messiness. And this freedom was worth infinitely more than any approval I'd ever chased. Now let me talk about what happens in that actual moment when you stop seeking approval And I do mean a specific moment, though it's also an ongoing process. There's often this particular instant of recognition, this shift in awareness, where you suddenly see the whole game with crystal clarity. You see how much energy you've been pouring into managing what people think. You see how futile it is, how exhausting, how it's been keeping you from actually being alive. In that moment, something drops away like a heavy coat falling off your shoulders. The burden just falls, and there's this tremendous lightness, this massive relief. It's like you've been carrying a boulder up a mountain your entire life, and suddenly you realize you can just put it down. Nobody actually requires you to carry it. You were only carrying it because you thought you had to. This doesn't mean the old patterns vanish instantly like magic. The habit of seeking approval is carved deep into your nervous system. You'll still catch yourself doing it. You'll still notice that split-second calculation before you speak. You'll still feel that spike of anxiety when someone disapproves. But now you see it happening. You're aware of the pattern playing out. And awareness itself starts to dissolve the pattern like sunlight melting ice. You'll start noticing, oh, there it is again. I was about to change what I was going to say because I was worried about their reaction. And in noticing it, you suddenly have a choice. You can go ahead with the modification, or you can take a breath and say what you actually mean. Each time you choose authenticity over approval seeking, the pattern gets a little weaker, loses a bit more of its grip. And as the pattern weakens, everything really does shift. Your relationships transform in the ways I've described. Your work transforms. You might find yourself drawn to completely different kinds of work, or you might approach your current job in a totally new way. Your daily experience shifts because you're no longer burning so much energy on managing impressions and controlling what people think. You have energy available for actually living, for being present in the moment, for genuinely engaging with whatever life brings. Even your sense of who you are shifts. Because when you're constantly seeking approval, your sense of self is shaky and unstable. It depends on other people's opinions, which change like the weather and often contradict each other. One person approves, another disapproves, and you're torn between them, completely lost about who you actually are. But when you stop seeking approval, you find a more stable sense of being, not some fixed, permanent identity, but a sense of yourself that doesn't depend on external validation, that doesn't need constant reinforcement from outside. This is what all the Eastern wisdom traditions have been pointing toward for thousands of years. The Taoists talk about Wu Wei, which means effortless action, acting from your true nature instead of from learned patterns and social programming. The Buddhists talk about letting go of ego, which is mostly made up of these approval-seeking patterns and the images we show to others. The Hindus talk about discovering the Atman, the true self that exists beneath all the layers of social masks and roles. When you stop seeking approval, you're not becoming someone new. You're stopping being all the fake versions of yourself you've been pretending to be. You're allowing what you actually are to emerge and express itself naturally without force. Now, I want to address something that comes up a lot. People ask, but don't we need to get along? Don't we need to consider other people? Won't everyone just become selfish jerks if they stop caring what others think? This question misses the point of what I'm saying. I'm not suggesting you become cold and indifferent to other people's well-being. I'm not advocating for selfish disregard of how your actions impact others. What I'm saying is you can be genuinely considerate without seeking approval. Actually, seeking approval often makes people less truly considerate because they're focused on managing how they look, rather than actually being present and caring about others. Real consideration comes from empathy, from recognizing other people as conscious beings just like you, from naturally wanting to act in ways that don't cause unnecessary pain. This has nothing to do with seeking approval and everything to do with basic human decency and awareness of our I connection. Also, a lot of what we call social harmony is really just collective pretending. Everyone performing for everyone else. Nobody saying what they actually think or feel. Everyone carefully maintaining acceptable facades That's not real harmony. It's mutual deception. Actual harmony, genuine community, can only be built on authenticity. It requires people who are willing to be real with each other, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's messy. So when you stop seeking approval, you're not destroying the possibility of real relationships and community. You're actually creating the conditions for it. You're inviting others into authentic connection instead of the shadow puppet show of social performance. Let me wrap this up with a final thought. The moment you stop seeking approval is the moment you actually start living, not the life you think you should be living, not the life others want you to live, but your real life, the one that's been patiently waiting for you all along, buried under all the performance and pretending. And when you start living this life, when you finally come home to yourself, you discover something absolutely beautiful. You discover that you're enough exactly as you are. Not perfect. You'll still mess up. You'll still have flaws and make mistakes. You'll still struggle and face uncertainty. But you're enough. You don't need anyone's approval to validate your existence, to make you real. You were always valid. You were always real. You just couldn't see it while you were so busy exhausting yourself trying to earn something you already had from the beginning. This is the great shift from seeking to simply being, from performing to existing, from the crushing effort of trying to become acceptable to the deep peace of recognizing that you already are acceptable, that you always were. This is freedom. This is what it means to fin. Ali, stop running and come home to who you've always been underneath everything. Thank you for listening.